Good morning. The subcommittee will come to order. We are here to mark up the Military Personnel Subcommittee portion of the National Defense Authorization Act for fiscal year 2011. The mark before members is another chapter in the subcommittee's continuing efforts to improve the quality of life for our service members and their families. As the nation enters the 9th year of war, it is becoming painfully apparent that the extraordinary high operations tempo has exacted a high penalty on our service members and their families. Although we have done much to improve existing programs and initiate new solutions, the demand to further enhance personnel and family support programs remains great. I'm pleased to report that this mark responds to the many challenges that have been presented to the subcommittee in ways that are both responsive and responsible. Thankfully, the subcommittee did not have to deal with the dramatic increases to TRICARE fees and premiums previously proposed by the Department of Defense. Secretary Gates has made his concern about the increasing cost of health care, and the subcommittee remains willing to collaborate with the Department of Defense and the organizations that represent our military personnel and their families to explore fair and equitable proposals to control significant cost growth. I appreciate the support of Mr. Wilson, the ranking member, in working together on this mark, and some of the highlights of the bill include continued support for increased end strengths for the active Army and Navy to meet the demands of current combat operations, to include an additional 7,000 personnel for the Army should the Army decide that the additional forces are needed. A 1.9% pay raise, which is 0.5% higher than the President's budget request. This is the 12th consecutive year of pay raises above ECI, and this raise will further reduce the gap between military and private sector pay raises from a high of 13.5% during the fiscal year 1999 to 1.9%. The subcommittee's recognition that two critical combat zone compensation benefits had fallen behind in value due to inflation since the last adjustment in 2004. The mark increases both hostile fire pay and family separation allowance to restore the buying power of the two pays. Also included new initiatives to complement our Year of the Military Family effort to create more robust family programs in the fiscal year 2010 bill. This mark includes new lapel buttons to pay tribute to the service and sacrifice of military spouses and their children, a pilot program to provide military spouses with career counseling to take advantage of personnel skills to meet the requirements of jobs needed by the military community, a provision to restore basic allowance for housing payments for dual military couples serving on sea duty, a one-time cash payment to assist severely wounded warriors to resettle caregivers providing aid and attendance care, and the authority for TRICARE beneficiaries to extend health care coverage to dependent children up to age 26, so that TRICARE beneficiaries would have the same ability to extend coverage to dependent children as that provided under health care reform. Over the past several years, the subcommittee has maintained a focus on sexual assault and harassment and remains committed to significantly reducing the military's rate of incidents of both. The mark includes 27 provisions to adopt the full range of recommendations by the Defense Task Force on Sexual Assault in the Military Services. These initiatives improve sexual assault prevention and response by the Department of Defense in the areas of strategic direction, prevention and training, response to victims, and accountability. The task force was a historic examination that changed the landscape of thinking on sexual assault in the military, and the package of legislative proposals in the mark is a worthy complement to that effort. Thanks to the initiative of Chairman Skelton, the mark includes a pilot program that provides the guidelines and structure needed to explore what will be necessary to extend the careers of officers to provide new opportunities for education and career-broadening assignments. The growth and restructuring of the force at installations around the nation has had an impact on the local communities that support them, and therefore, the mark includes an authorization of $50 million in the Department of Defense Impact Aid Program, an additional $15 million for local educational agencies directly impacted by force structure changes, and BRAC. I will say that the subcommittee continues to be frustrated by direct spending barriers that prevent us from making progress on issues such as concurrent receipt of military retired pay and VA disability, the widow's tax on the survivor benefit program annuity, and reform of retirement for reserve members. Unfortunately, the committee, and specifically the Military Personnel Subcommittee, does not have the mandatory offsets that would be required to achieve the large-scale solutions for any of those proposals. We continue to seek the mandatory offsets that will allow the committee to respond to member interests in these areas. We were able to identify some limited direct spending offsets that allowed the subcommittee to address some of the smaller direct spending issues that have frustrated the subcommittee for several years. And these issues included equity and disability benefits for combat wounded reservists, health care for reservists entitled to retired pay before age 60, a guarantee that reserve wounded warriors will receive credit for early retirement. Those three issues particularly got our attention and support here. I appreciate the contributions of all the members of the subcommittee and committee in developing our MARC. While we could not accommodate all the requests that were brought before our subcommittee, we were able to accommodate really quite a sizable number of them. This is a good MARC, and I appreciate the support and cooperation of the ranking member, Mr. Wilson. I'll now be very happy to recognize Mr. Wilson, the ranking minority member of the subcommittee, for any opening comments he would like to make.
Madam Chairwoman, the recommendations contained in your MARC are the product of an open, pleasantly incredible bipartisan process. It has been a pleasure to work with you and the dedicated staffs who have helped develop the MARC. You've already provided the major highlights, but I also want to focus on some of the most important recommendations in the MARC. I want to thank you for including in your MARC a 1.9% basic pay raise for the military, as proposed in my bill, HR 4427. I know that there is growing opposition to increasing the basic pay of the military. I would challenge anyone to find a civilian job that has the same set of requirements and risk as those experienced by our military personnel. For me, the assertion that personnel costs are crowding out other priorities should not be solved by asking military personnel to take less, but for a defense budget that provides both the personnel and other requirements to fully defend this nation. At a time where Iran is building missiles capable of hitting the United States in less than 5 years, and terrorists daily are in training to attack our families, we must defend our citizens. The highest priority of the national government is national defense. I'm also grateful that the committee was able to find a small amount of mandatory spending offsets to allow your MARC to include provisions to address reserve component disability retirement issues, to allow for some early reserve to be eligible for TRICARE, and to permit wounded and injured members retained on active duty to earn credit toward early reserve retirement. Despite all the good things in the MARC, I must raise my disappointment that we were unable to address some key issues involving mandatory spending, such as the President's proposal that would have allowed military personnel retired with disabilities, the Chapter 61 retirees, to receive both their full military disability retirement pay and VA disability pay, the concurrent receipt issue. Nor was it proposed to eliminate the widow's tax that results because military survivors are required to forfeit their survivor benefit plan annuity. I also will continue to work for reform of the reserve retirement system. I intend to attempt to address these issues at the full committee markup. Despite my reservations and concerns, this is an excellent MARC. It truly is bipartisan, and I intend to support it.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. We will now proceed to mark up HR 5136, the National Defense Authorization Act for fiscal year 2011. The members should have before them copies of our subcommittee's MARC and directive report language. Without objection, the first reading of the bill is dispensed with. Is there any discussion or question on the chairwoman's MARC? Hearing none, if there is no discussion, the chair lays before the members the text of the MARC for consideration. Without objection, the mark is open to amendment at any point. Are there any amendments to the chairwoman's mark? Okay. And therefore, there's no further debate either.
Madam Chair, may I just say something, please? I just wanted to thank you for working with all of us. I just wanted to thank you for working with all of us to ensure that as you put together your mark, that many of our concerns were heard and that some of the changes were made. And I think that you worked in a very bipartisan manner. And I know that there are 2 or 3 outstanding issues that we may take on at the full committee level and on the House floor. But it truly is really a pleasure to see such a noble and efficient chairwoman. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Sanchez, and just really to applaud all the members of the committee, because I think that working with staff, and particularly the staff that's done a tremendous job, and the reason that there are not so many amendments is because they've done such a good job in bringing all of this together. We certainly appreciate that. We know that there are always going to be issues that remain, but the fact that we have an opportunity, at least at this point, I think, to be working together says a lot, and I certainly appreciate that very much. The question now occurs on the adoption of the mark. So many as are in favor will say aye. 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 Those opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the mark is adopted. We don't need a... Okay, so the chair now recognizes the gentleman from Arkansas, Dr. Snyder, for the purpose of a motion.
Madam Chair, I move that the subcommittee report the mark favorably to the full committee.
The question is on the motion of the gentleman from Arkansas, Dr. Snyder. So many as are in favor will say aye. 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 Those opposed? A quorum being present, the ayes have it, and the mark is adopted. And without objection, a motion to reconsider is laid upon the table. Without objection, members have 5 legislative days within which to submit written statements into the record. So ordered. I also ask and ask consent that staff be authorized to make necessary conforming technical and clerical changes. Without objection, so ordered. There being no further legislative business before the subcommittee, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everybody.